Welcome to The Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a show that is a central hub and safe space for authors to share their stories. The Bold Book with Dr. Denise begins now.
Hello there. My name is Dr. Denise Nicholson, and this podcast is for anyone looking for inspiration. Today, I must welcome to this episode. I am so thrilled to have with us Mr. Don Johnston. I ain't going to tell you his age. He's going to tell you, but he is the oldest member of this podcast, the oldest person that I've had the honor and pleasure to interview, the brilliant mind and the person behind this provoking political thriller, By Means of Peace. Welcome.
Thank you, Dr. Denise. The first thing I want to do is just thank you for having me on your show. I have really been looking forward to it. And you have already hinted at my age, and so I may as well go ahead and get that out of the way. I am 88 years old, and I have been writing fiction since I turned 80, and I've written 4 books. But this one is the one that people seem to like the best because it is a political thriller. And let me tell you why I decided to write it. I know you're going to
Please do. Yes, that was my first question. What inspired you? So let me hear.
No, I've been listening to your podcast. I know your modus operandi. that is a good question. I started writing this book at the midterm elections 2 years ago, and I saw how divided the nation is along the political parties. And I started thinking of words like groupthink and conspiracy theories and all that stuff. And I said, well, wouldn't this make a good book if I could get this put together in time for the 2024 presidential election? It should be timed just right. And so it came out last year, and I have a few readers, but not as many as I would like. But my goal is twofold. I want my entertainers to simply enjoy it. And I would say under that, I started to say a subliminal message, but it is not that subliminal because nearly everybody that reviewed it on Amazon, they said, well, it looks like what's happening today and this type of thing. So I did not incriminate my Democratic friends or my Republican friends. I had a third party candidate win the presidency, and his the title of the book, By Means of Peace, he said, and it has to do with things we are all concerned with, equality. And he said they were wearing armbands. In fact, the political party, the ones that really went all in, it said equality equals peace. And certainly it would. But nevertheless, he did great for a while, but then he went downhill. So I'll let you ask me a question, or I'll just start out anywhere you want me to.
You know what? I love it. I love that you have this character, Ruben Rogoff, right?
Yes.
That's your protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Now, this Ruben is charismatic third-party president.
Mm-hmm.
What was the process of creating this guy, this character, who balances out hope and the potential danger that, could possibly become?
I wanted to have him. So charismatic that when he starts running, that people really flock to him. And if he's going to defeat the other two parties, naturally he would have to be charismatic. And so he pops up with as a third party candidate, and he names the party the Peace Party. There actually been small parties named that before, but it had to be that almost had to be the name of it the way I was going, because I wanted it where when so many people began to follow him, and then later on when trouble started, some of the people said, did he deceive us? He did all the things he said he was going to do at first, but now he's not doing them. And most people have fallen for him so much that they still believe he's the greatest president ever. But there's a small group of people, that's some of my main characters, a young man named Darren and a young lady, Marissa, and others. They began to suspect that the president might even be causing some of these problems just to control the people. That's that old, but I put it in a book.
Just like old politicians do, huh?
Uh, hey, you know that Denzel Washington said. You heard what Denzel Washington said recently. It's almost about that. He verified what I was thinking in my book. He said, I may not get the exact quote, but he said Americans need to realize that both political parties are trying to, let's say, manipulate their members so that they get a vote every time, whether they put up a good candidate or not. That wasn't exactly the way Denzel said it, but he verified what I said in my book, actually.
Well, Denzel is wise. So, anything he said, I will listen to it intently because he is also not only wise, but he's from my hometown, Mount Vernon, New York.
Mount Vernon. I didn't remember where Denzel is from. I like him very much. He is actually one of my favorite actors. I never met him, but and the movie that I liked best of his was Man on Fire. But a lot of people say that was too violent. It's my favorite. If you looked at it on Rotten Tomatoes, it'd be down pretty low, and others that he had done would be much higher. I like the remake of The Magnificent Seven. I thought Denzel was great in that. He's a good actor. And he's a good man. He's a good man, too.
He's a good man. He's a good actor, but he's also a good man.
That is more important. You wouldn't say that about everybody in Hollywood, but I've always loved Denzel Washington.
Yes, he's done good for our community. He's contributed greatly to the boys and girls community. So we love him and admire him. But most of all, he's a good man that makes sense. So if he has anything to say about politics, I'd pay attention.
Well, my politics here they were very careful because, as I said, I have many good friends on both sides of the aisle. And I said the best way to handle this is to create a third party that he's so charismatic he could win. I really don't think the way for the next foreseeable future, I don't believe a third party could win here in the United States because we are tightly divided. And in my book, I say that Denzel echoed what I was saying. He said it better, but I said they were deliberately divided people up into multiple groups. And I said all of those groups have some identity, and that's important. But I said we have to identify as Americans first and do a little thinking on our own. That was my preaching in it. Thinking on our own, as opposed to particularly groupthink, as I said. Also, I throw in conspiracy theories like, well, one of them was that the president was causing these problems so that he could rise to power.
So you said that a third party may, in the future be able to win, but our system is set up to keep that out. So I don't know how we would have to change the system, change how the framework is in order for that to come about, because we would love to have, a third party more than what we have now. We would love to have.
I agree with you 100% on that. And when Clinton was running against Bush, Ross Perot, he was probably a good candidate. He was a third party candidate.
I remember that, yes.
And he probably got as many votes as any third party did. I don't remember, but he had several percentage points. And most third parties nowadays, they don't even show up on the chart. They're so low.
Exactly.
But you're 100% right. I agree with you completely because the system way it's set up, no third party stands a chance.
We need to change that. And I guess that's something that we've all been calling for. Well, not all. A lot of us have been calling for change. And I think in order for us to see change, we need to look at the system, how it is set up to not give more than two parties the chance and opportunity to serve. So, a large number of the constituents has been saying, this is not working for us. Okay. We need more. We just can't just be choosing from the lesser of the two evils. It should be more than just that. So anyway, your book tackles themes of political manipulation and global unrest, things that we've seen for a long time and things that will be seen during this presidency and has been going on for a long time. Political unrest, global unrest. Do you think we're currently seeing any parallels between the fictional world of By Means of Peace and the real political events of today?
If I had, I lay them up here, but I don't know what I did with them. I had several of the reviews, and they said this is not just a novel; it echoes what's going on today. I've gotten about 100, I think 114 reviews, and there was probably about 30 or 40% of them said we see this today, and so. I do think I nailed it from that standpoint. And that's I want people to think. My writing has three purposes. One is I just like to do it. I got plenty of time, and I love to write. Then I want the readers to be entertained. But as my novels, each one. This is the third novel. One of the books I wrote was about the stock market, but then each one gets a little more political. But this one is, I'm saying, think for yourself. And don't follow the groupthink leaders quite so closely. That's was how I would summarize what I said in there, and I would hope that we could all do that. The thing about my Ruben Rogoff, when he comes in, he solves those long-standing problems that have been with us. That's like trouble in the Mideast. It's been going on forever. He stares down Russia and China, and I even created another virus. I call it the Phoenix virus because the Phoenix, rise from the dead. And so I had the same problems that we have today. And it's 120 years in the future. I would certainly hope we solve them before that. But anyway, he solves those problems. Then he does some censorship and that type of thing. We have a book banning and that sort of thing where one side might want to say what they want to do, but not give the other side the equal chance. He has that kind of thing. And then there is a conspiracy pops up that there's some group of terrorists trying to overthrow the government. And so Ruben Rogoff later on, at first he ignores that. Later on, he starts telling people to watch for those people, and he has a hotline to Washington, D.C. and stuff like that. But my main characters in there are beginning to believe that that's not even real, that the terrorist group might be a figment of his imagination. And and they had heard a broadcast, and it was in Spanish, but the group was called Los Ignotos, which means the unknown in Spanish, or the unknown suspects, or something along that line. Some event happened in Barcelona in the book. Later on, the people noticed that Ignotos is real close to the name of the president's chief medical officer. It's Ignacio. So they began to say, did we hear this wrong? The plane went down and a guy uttered some last words in Spanish, and he seemed to say Los Ignotos. So I have this mystery here. Did he really say the guy's name? The chief medical officer was Ignacio Allende, but Ignacio and Ignoto, and I mentioned that the broadcast was slurred and blurred and static and that kind of. So I run these conspiracy theories all the way through the thing, but most people still keep thinking that Ruben Rogoff is going to do it all because he is so charismatic, great speaker, and this type of thing. And so they keep supporting him while some are beginning to decide on what they need to do.
And sometimes, we support someone because we have a hope of peace, or we have hope of unification, or a hope of equality. Your book talks about the concept of false peace. I saw that was a central piece of this novel. How do you think society can be seduced by the promise of peace? Because I believe even now we're being, seduced by the promise of peace, and that may be dangerous to real peace.
I think it shows, I've tried to show how the promise of peace could lead to absolute power. And that's what he had. Actually, in the book, he started off, he had been the president of the United Nations when he started running for president of the United States. So essentially in the book, he rises to a position of world dictator. He can do anything he wants to, but he started off just like would get any of our attentions. And as I said, they had armbands and it said, equality equals peace. Who
Mm-hmm.
wouldn't buy that? Everybody would.
Okay.
And,
Yes.
and so they bought into it, and he delivered uh, more or less through his first term.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, by the time he comes to run again, he is so powerful. No one he wins by acclamation. No one runs against him. And so at that point, I would say he is essentially the world dictator and can do whatever he wants to. And then, though, the troubles began on all fronts. And my two main characters, you got to have a young man and a young woman in it. Well, he's in Houston. I live in Sugar Land, right at the southwest corner of Houston. Anyhow, he lives in Houston, but there's a family moved from Brazil, and he meets this beautiful young girl named Marissa. And of course,
Mm.
he falls for her, but she has a boyfriend still in Rio de Janeiro, and he has been trying to get his paperwork together. At least he says he has. So that stalls the thing for a while. But finally, Marissa tells Darren, "I'm giving up on Octavio," was his name. He's not really trying to get here. She realized that he probably wasn't. Anyway, so they start a relationship, and then she works for the embassy, so she's been a political type person, whereas Darren is a struggling author. He's trying to get started as a science fiction writer, but
Mm-hmm.
Marissa and after they began to go out together and this type of thing, she has a dream. She says it's a vision, but at any rate, she feels called to Washington D.C. to work for the Peace Party for Ruben Rogoff. So at that point, they struggle to maintain a long distance relationship, but she is all in on everything. But Darren and he and his friends began to, and he's a strong conspiracy theorist anyway. He begins to see things that just don't add up, and then eventually, Marissa comes back from Washington, and she declares her love for him and says, even if we differ here on some of these things, I'm not going to go to Washington if you don't come with me, that kind of thing. So they swear their allegiance to each other, and the story goes on there. But the problems continue, and even there's some attacks on religious shrines throughout the world.
Mm-hmm.
And they blow up the Dome of the Rock in Jerusalem. They attack Mecca and Saudi Arabia, and they damage the statue in Rio de Janeiro, Christ the Redeemer. That statue, remember, is Jesus with his arms held out wide. That's all those religious, big religious statues, really, like wonders of the world. They get damaged, and so the president says it's Los Ignotos, the terrorist group, that did it, and my small group of people that have turned against the president. Marissa is still on the borderline. She couldn't believe that the president had done that, but the Darren and his friends began to think that the president has actually had that done himself, and he's promises that the United Nations and everybody he'll levy a tariff or tax or something where that they will repair all of those monuments. And the book, when it ends, it ends in Darren has an engagement ring in his pocket, and they go down to the beach here. It's down at Freeport, Texas, not Freeport in the Bahamas. It's about 60 miles from Houston, and it's not a very good beach. But anyhow, they go there, and he's going to ask her to marry him. And the book ends there, and I can't tell what happens because it make no one want to buy the book.
I know that Darian and Marissa are very interesting characters, and for one, they're caught up into their personal struggles and the political chaos. What role do you believe personal relationships play in understanding the larger issues of society?
They are so important that young people would hardly believe it if you try to I'll tell you how I came to understand this. When I got out of high school, my parents were too poor to send me to college, and so I joined the Air Force. I served 4 years, but I did it for two reasons. One is so I could go to college on the GI Bill. The next and the next reason was that I would get my military service over with. This was in 1954. I got it when I graduated high school, and so I was under the strong threat of being drafted. And I said, I'll get that out of the way. I'll get my military service out of the way, and then I won't have to borrow money to go to college. And so I ended up, after basic training and after tech school, I was trained in jungle survival. And so they sent me to the Panama Canal, and plenty of jungles down there. And so I loved it down there, incidentally. But the thing that was probably as much importance to me as anything I studied in college, and I have a degree in biology and chemistry, was meeting people. I lived in Panama for 3.5 years, the rest of the time that I was in the service. And it was a good thing for me to go to another country where they did not speak my language and where they did not have my customs. And so I would say this, I took advantage of every opportunity I had. And so I learned to speak Spanish, and I had many good Panamanian friends, but it broadened my perspective on the world, and especially on people. And I found out during this experience that people are a lot alike everywhere, and you make friends with people by affirming them. You don't negate some idea that they might have that would differ from yours. It was interesting. I was raised in East Texas in a place called the Piney Woods. The town I was born in had 200 people. It's a big town, 200 people. Anyway, so I had a fairly limited worldview when I went into the Air Force, that's for sure. The school I graduated from had 222 people. The year I graduated, that's all 12 grades. There were like 18 kids in each grade. So I came from a small background, really small. And when I was in the Air Force, the funny thing, my best 3 friends ended up, one of them was from Long Island, New York, one was from New Jersey, and one was from Fort Worth, Texas. So I did have a Texas friend, but I quickly made friends with these other guys, and we found out we were way more alike than we were different. The guys from Long Island, our accents were so different we could hardly understand each other at first. And you may have noticed I have a East Texas accent.
I think that's one of the problems that we have today, that, more people are thinking that their differences are greater than what they have in common. And it hurts me when I look at how we treat each other, how we treat our neighbors,
Absolutely.
How we treat our, neighbors, or our, not the neighbors next door, but people in other countries. I think it's really painful to see that we think we are individually more important than the next person, when we all have the same desires for family, desires to see our children grow up and be successful, desires for our children to live,
We are thinking exactly along the same lines. And I learned that over the years. And while I was in Panama, I've told people this, and it's true. It's almost hard to believe. But anyway, I knew Panamanian citizens of all levels of society. As I've told some, I have eaten escargot with the brother of one of the ex-presidents, and I have eaten iguana in a grass hut with indigenous people. They weren't Spanish. They actually spoke another language, and they spoke Spanish, but they were indigenous people in Panama before they came there. I have sat down with those people. They could speak Spanish, and I could too. But their language was some weird name. It's called Embera-Wunan. I mean, I don't know what that language is. But it's not Spanish. But anyhow,
right.
I've actually
you pronounce it pretty well.
Was that close? They lived in grass huts. And I found out I had an explorer's knack to me, and I was out in the jungle on a survival expeditions where I was teaching it. But I found out if you talk to them, they talk to you. And I'll say the same thing about New York. My wife, my wife passed away 10 years ago, so I'm a widower.
Sorry to hear that. Yes.
We love to go to New York. And the first time we went up there years ago, people said, some people said, people in New York are not friendly. We didn't see that. Everybody we saw was friendly. The first time we were there, this was years ago, we stand there looking at an old paper map. That was a long time ago. And, some New Yorker walked by carrying a briefcase. I know he's going to work because he's wearing a suit. He said, could I help you? You're looking for something. We found that to be the case. And that was because, we accepted them, they accepted us. But I really, we're in 100% agreement on that. We have to claim the things where we're alike, and we are much more alike than we are different. I think that's sometimes what the political parties do. They start emphasizing the differences when we're much, much more alike than we are different. But I think I lived in Panama for 3.5 years, and I was serving out the rest of my military time. I could have left a year earlier, but I'd have been assigned some other base, and I loved it down there. So I just asked my commander to let me stay, and he did. So when I got out, I got discharged. But I did write for the base newspaper. That was my only. I haven't written any fiction until I turned 80 for 60 years. It was a wide gap in my writing, but I wrote for the base newspaper there in Panama. It was a weekly. It was a gossip column. It wasn't any. I was just telling what went on in my outfit there to scout around, and I got no pay for doing it. I was just doing that on the side. I had a press card to get into free sporting events. That was all I got out of that.
Listen, you are impressive and inspiring. Okay. You have a beautiful writing career that you just started in your 80s. You were 80 years old when you started this beautiful career. So guys, if you're listening and you're thinking it's too late for you, it is never too late, as evidenced by Mr. Don Johnston. Okay. I wanted to ask you a little bit more about this book, By Means of Peace. Your book has been compared to the works of Philip K. Dick and Ray Bradbury. How do you balance the futuristic storytelling with the real world political issues?
Well, I wish I could write like Philip K. Dick and Ray Bradbury. I'll say that. A lot of people wish that. But anyway, I think I have, let's say at my advanced age, I have learned to be very perceptive and analytical, and can probably tell the real truth from fiction, no matter where I see it, a little bit more than younger people. But the thing is, with this of social media and the incredible advances in artificial intelligence, it gets harder to separate what's real from what's not real. In fact, Dr. Denise, that's my next book. I'm writing one on artificial intelligence and how the government is using it. They say to use it to understand what we the people might want, but in the background, the question exists: are they going to use it to control us? To do what they want to.
Exactly. And you talked about that a little bit. You touched on that in the book, how, there's a group called groupthink. And how is groupthink a destructive force? How can you, because we are all trying to bond with others and get into groups where we can work for bigger promises, especially the promise of peace and security. How can individuals resist the pressure to conform, especially when it's tied to this big dream and this big hope and the big ideology that promises peace and security?
That is a very tough question, and in my 88 years, I'm not sure I could conjure up a good answer. Nevertheless, I think we do want to belong. And I think what you said is 100% right. I've got groups here. I go eat breakfast with one bunch on Thursday morning. I go somebody else on Thursday night, and I go, and they're different groups, and we do different things. We need that. We need other people, and yet we don't want to be led astray by having to have some uniform thinking. I
Yes.
think we have to have critical thinking, and that's what I address in the book. But I don't solve the problem. I present the problem. I think it is something that we we as we have seen more of the world, we can understand it better and analyze it better. But then uh, you can't isolate yourself. You have to belong to some groups, and
Yes. Yes.
yet you don't want the some strong charismatic leader to lead you down the primrose path to destruction. And that's what I show in the book. Really, that he is so charismatic. After he does the first things he promised, he is able to deceive them. And we don't want someone to use charisma to lead us astray. But I think of leaders in the past that I thought were well, I was in college when John F. Kennedy was elected, and he was a very charismatic speaker. John F. Kennedy was a great speaker, and we liked him a lot. And through the years, you have people like that, but most of the politicians are not going to be so charismatic that everybody would follow them without question. And
But
that's
I think you raise a very important point in that we we need to feel like we belong to a group, and we need groups. We
hmm
need to a place to express ourselves, and we need a place where we feel welcomed. But
hmm
no matter what space you're in, you should feel autonomous
hmm
enough to speak up about important issues. And if you don't feel like speaking up in these environment, and you feel like what you have to say will be shot down, then you still don't need to absorb everything that others are saying and trying to stuff things down your throat, or maybe not stuff it down your throat, but be so creative that you gobble it up, or
hmm
charismatic that you gobble it
Yeah,
up.
yeah. They didn't. They in the book they don't realize that they are supporting somebody, let's say, who has more or less turned evil. And in it, I actually present the viewpoint that he and his chief medical officer and another friend who is in the government had been uh, uh, plotting to construct this triumvirate, all three of them together, where they would, let's say, take over not only the leadership of the United States, but essentially the leadership of the world, and that is what they do. He is all powerful, but my friends are still operating pretty well, and there's no ultra hardships on them. In as much they did have to, there's book banning and some stuff like that they had to give up some books and all of that, but it in fact some of them were Philip K. Dick books and Ray Bradbury books. you know,
Some of what's going on today, though, like we are
yeah,
seeing more books banned than ever before.
mentioning what Philip K. Dick, his movies were Total Recall, Minority Report, and two or three other. Well, it's about 10 movies made out of his book. He said about what he said. This is, I think, an astute say. He said, if you can control the meaning of words, you could control the people that must use those words. And I thought about that a lot. That's pretty. That he's my favorite writer, Philip K. Dick, and he his books were thought provoking and raised around what it means to be human. Really, mine is not quite that deep because everybody in it is at least human. But in one of his, I don't want the charismatic leader to promote himself or herself up above the grassroots people. And that is in one of Philip K. Dick's books, the high government officials call themselves cogs, like cogs in the big wheel. And they secretly refer to the people as pure saps. They spell it all together, but it's pure saps. They spell it P-U-R-S-A-P-S. But anyway,
Yes.
I learned a lot from Philip K. Dick's writings, and he's my favorite author. But I just took this up when I totally retired because I had written technical reports and things like that. They were no fiction in that. They were supposed to be telling the truth, and that
Mm-hmm.
actually was a little bit hard at first because, except for the little stint of writing in Panama, I had written no fiction, but writing technical material and research reports where you're stating facts. And when I first started trying to create a story, it seemed a little hard at first. I said, and then I finally said, well, whatever I make up in this story is true, at least for the duration of that story. So I got over that roadblock.
I like that. I like how you spoke positively into yourself so that you can move forward and get this done because it's a dream of yours. And when
Mm.
you have a dream, if you work on it, no matter what roadblock comes up or whenever a hurdle come up, if you can get through it just by talking positively to yourself, that is a really admirable thing to do. You talked about, th- well, the role of technology and
Mhm.
power is one of the things that you talk about with a new world order and
Mhm.
as a part of the story. But how does technology, as you see it today, helping us to understand the politics of our world now?
Uh, I'm not sure I know the answer to that question. I think that first of all, information spread is so incredible. Uh,
Mm-hmm.
uh, that you can have the answer to anything in a microsecond. I mean, you can. I got Alexa sitting up here on my shelf. If I say Alexa, well, she's going to answer me. But anyhow, you
Mm-hmm.
know, you can ask any question and find out anything, and that will help us learn a lot about people. But then I see all of the social media and that type of stuff. It presents it presents the possibility that for instance, I get contacted regularly by people that I don't know whether they're real or not,
Mm.
and I one thing I did recently, and this is kind of example of what I'm talking about. I joined several writing groups on Amazon. I joined 8 different ones, and just to make my works known a little bit better out there. And
Yeah.
I immediately started getting friend requests on Amazon. Well, I'll just tell it like this. They were beautiful women, if that was really their picture, and they had nothing to do with writing or anything. Well, a few of them wanted to help promote my book, but some of them, were just. It seems that they might have looked at those groups and just picked up the names and said, let's form a friendship or this type of thing. So,
But they
I,
don't know nothing about you, and or they don't know anything about you,
that's
and
right.
they wanted to friend you. But
Yeah.
a lot of people, they don't see friending people on social media as important, like screening people before befriending them or requesting
Mhm.
friendship. They don't see that as important. Like we used to do. We skeptical about people being in our circle, but not anymore. People just
Mhm.
friend someone because it just pops up in their feed. What social media are you a part of?
It's just Facebook. I don't do Twitter. Well, Twitter's gone. I don't do X or any of those others, but I do Facebook, and I don't do it a whole lot.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not really big on social media, and this is one thing, of course, that I have read about. If you want to promote your book, you should, and I certainly understand that. But they say build your platform. You get your web page, and you blog, and you do podcasts, and you have your long email list, and and I see people successful in promoting their books that way. I'll just have to be blunt. Some of the books, I think mine are better, and they selling lots more than me. So they know what they're doing.
Well,
They know
guess
how.
what? I think Facebook is a really good social
I
media
like
tool. So
Facebook.
if you're doing Facebook and you like it and you understand it, continue doing that. I think you're doing a good job promoting your book and your work.
Mhm. I'm trying to, and when I contacted my friends and got them to consult with me, and they started lining up the podcasts and interviews, I like that because I'm not afraid to talk. I like to talk, and
Yeah.
I know that you. all of you people, all of you that do podcasts, you like to talk too, or you wouldn't be doing that,
I
right?
love to talk. I love it. I love that I have a platform that I can share my story, but I love it more that I give people the opportunity to share their story and their message and their work, because I believe in the power of words. I
I do too.
believe the words can change your life and change you from, ordinary to extraordinary. The
Mhm.
power of So that's why I love this podcast, that I get to speak, but I also get to promote works that are written, because 100 years from now, when we're no longer here, those books will be here. Our podcast may not, but our books will be here.
Still be here. That's right. No, I
Yeah.
feel the
So
same way about words. Uh, and I learned to speak Spanish while I was in Panama. I don't practice much, and I'm not that good at it, but I still can talk to someone if they don't speak a word of English. If Spanish, I'm proud of that. But it helps you learn the differences in words and the similarities in words and how language developed and all of that. But I have a great appreciation for words.
thank you
Uh,
so much for writing this beautiful book, By Means of Peace. Before you go, there are three questions that I love to ask all my guests. And so I'm going to ask you those three questions also. I'm going to be easy on you. Okay.
okay.
What's one bold promise that you can share with the audience?
My bold promise is when you want to do something, never give up and keep on trying. And don't think that you're getting too old to do anything. You need to take care of yourself. I walk 2 miles 3 times a week. Now, that doesn't sound like a lot to young people, but
That's a lot.
and I
Two
try to,
miles, three
I,
times a
so,
week.
so
That's
don't,
about a half hour each time,
yeah,
each time, right?
yeah, that's right. A
Yeah.
little over a half hour.
Yeah,
I,
that's beautiful.
I, I try to work. I walk a mile in about 17 minutes, so it's really about 34. It's a fast walk. I can't run anymore. I can jog a little, but I say take care of yourself. But I say never give up, because I was raised in a very poor part of the country. Most of the people there were farmers, small farmers, and and so I had a dream and a vision, and I had to spend some time in the service to go to college. But don't ever give up. That's what I would say. If you have a dream, you may get some roadblock, but find a way over it or around it.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much for sharing. What's a bold statement you can share with the audience that will cause a paradigm shift?
Well, I would say think for yourself. You have to belong to groups, but be sure you're doing some individual thinking on your own. You have to analyze everything you've heard or been told, but think for yourself is. I think that if we would all do that, uh, we would probably improve the country.
Beautiful. And the third question, and very important question, what's a bold move that you'd like to make in the future?
Well, I think that I would like for my. It's not a bold move. I guess it's. I may be showing my age here, but it might be how that I would like my family to remember that I was a good father, a good grandfather, and a great grand. I have 5 great grandkids, Dr. Denise. I have five
Wow.
great grandkids. So I would like all of them to say he was a good man and he set an example for us to show that hard work does pay off. It may take a long time, but eventually it pays off.
That's beautiful. Thank you so much. I appreciate you coming on this show and on our podcast and sharing about your book, By Means of Peace. Where can the audience get a copy?
The best place is to get it through Amazon. If you went to Barnes and Noble, they would have to order it. You could do that.
Uh-huh.
So I would recommend, if whether you want the ebook, the paperback, or the audio book, Amazon is still the easiest way. They just about control the book market now, such a large portion of it. But that's the easiest way to do it.
Okay, you heard it here. Get your copy from Amazon. You can just probably put in By Means of Peace by Don Johnston, and it will come up where you can get it in a short space of time. So, Amazon, they're always ready. Okay,
Mhm.
they're always ready. So, before you go, after readers finish reading By Means of Peace, what do you hope that they take from the story?
First, I hope that they enjoyed the story, that they thought the characters seemed real and that the conversation was like real people talk. And after that, I would like for them, from the political aspect of it, to say, I'm going to think a little more on my own as opposed to what political leaders might be telling me to think. So I want individual thought to come out of it, but I want them to be entertained and enjoy, however you want to say it. I want them to enjoy it, the first thing, but think is the second thing.
Absolutely. You hear that? Think. And I would add, love your neighbor as you love yourself.
Absolutely.
You
I do love my neighbors, and they're Asian across the street.
okay.
They're some of my best friends. They call me Uncle Don. They're younger.
Yes.
They're about 60, and so they have adopted me as an uncle.
Yes, show compassion, help others, and love your neighbor. Don't let politics tear you apart. Think for yourself. It is important to remember that the onus is on you to think on you for yourself. Okay. Thank you so much for joining me again. I appreciate you, and I appreciate you coming up here and sharing your book. But most of all, I want you to come back because I know you've written other books and you have more messages to share. So when you come up with your new book, because I know you're working on something,
Right.
Please come back and share it with the audience.
I will do so, Dr. Denise. It'll be about a year before I have it finished, but I will say this. I enjoyed talking to you a lot. We had a lot of fun.
And I enjoy talking with you. You are really quick and sassy, and I can't wait to read this book. I don't know when I'm going to get it, but I'm going to make a note so that I can put it on my reading list. And maybe when I have a holiday, when I have some vacation, I have something to read. I love reading when I'm traveling. So I would love to have this.
If you don't like it, I'll refund you money.
Okay. I'm sure I'll enjoy it. Especially this season that we're in, we need some hope by means of peace.
That is correct.
All right. Thank you again. You take care, and I'll see you soon. Guys, remember, if you would like to write a book and you don't know where to start, send me an email, authordnicholson@gmail.com. I can help you get your book idea out of your head and onto paper and make some money, honey. Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us for the Bold Book of the Day with Dr. Denise Nicholson, a central hub and a safe space for authors to share their stories. Follow Dr. Denise on Facebook and Instagram at Denise Nicholson, or go to denisenicholson.com. Remember, no one can share your story better than you.